All right, so today I wanted to jump in and show you a DevLog update and really specifically get into the graphs and show you some of the things I'm working on and how things are working. I've definitely been learning a lot as I've been going on here. So yeah, my graphs have slowly improved over time, things being more efficient. But yeah, let's get into it. I always like to start just with a play through of the functionality. This is just a development level. So anything that's here obviously is just for testing purposes. So let me just show you what we have. First things first, movement, crouch, jump, everything that you'd expect. The only cool thing about movement is I do have a check to see when it's safe to stand when I'm crouching. So if I let go, obviously I stand up, but if I'm under something, then I try to stand up and it will not stand up. And then as you saw, that prompt on the screen was telling me L is my flashlight. So I can walk crouched, and as soon as I leave whatever's above my head, it will automatically stand up and I'll resume walking at a normal pace. So I will show you how I've done this. Turn off my flashlight there. I also have items, what will be items. I'm just working on the functionality. You'll see my cursor there. Keep an eye on my cursor in the middle of the screen. When I look at something I can interact with, I have a little animation. So I'll show you how I did that. Let's pick up this book. Little message says it was added to inventory. Same thing with the key card. And when I press I bring up my inventory, and of course those are my items. I haven't completely finished this functionality yet, as far as like the user interface goes. But if I were to click on this, I have that equipped, and I will use it with my next interact. So if I try to interact with this character with the book equipped, it'll say, hey, it's equipped and set up the interaction. So I haven't set that up yet, but things are working so far as getting to this point. So when I interact with that character, the game knows I have the book. So I just right click to unequip, and it just let me know it's been placed back in the inventory. So yeah, that is the item system so far. And now let's talk about the big one, which is the dialogue. So if I talk to this character, hey, how can I help you? I have a choice system, right? So depending on my answer, this is standard in games these days, a lot of games of this type, nothing new, but I'll show you how I have it set up in Unreal, which might be new to you. So if I say, I don't know, can you? I'm a little bit sassy. It says, humans, you have no manners. Can I help you find where you're going? Let's just go through this conversation. My ticket says I'm supposed to be this gate. Let me see your ticket. I'm sorry. It says here in my system, your flight was canceled. Looks like the next available flight is in 3 days. I can get you a complimentary room at the Tip Top Hotel. It's not far from here. Is there really nothing sooner? Earth's not a very popular destination. Flights tend to be infrequent. Is there anything else I can assist you with? Thanks. That's all for now. Safe travels and see you in a few days. Now, the cool thing about this is if I talk to him again, he's not going to start from as if he never knew me. He knows we've talked, so he says, back again, how can I help? And the dialogue is much shorter. I can get information from him. I can ask him again if there's nothing sooner. I can just say goodbye. So let's get some information. How do I get to the hotel? The hotel shuttle service runs all night. There's a concierge desk on the first floor if you need help. Is there anything else? Goodbye. Safe travels and see you in a few days. So I'm going to go over how I set up this dialogue system in a way that works well for a variety of characters that we're going to have. You'll also notice this character is pretty fleshed out. He's pretty realized as far as the style of my game goes. I'm going for a very low fidelity look with my game. So kind of a chunky pixel look. But this is the style that I've gone for. So that is a look at kind of the playthrough of the functionality so far. But now let's get into some of the actual node graphs. So a good thing to start with is the crouch functionality for my character. So if we go to Blueprints, Characters, Player, here is my Blueprint Player character. Now this is made up of a capsule component for collision and a camera, of course, for the first person. And then I have a few extra things. I have a spring arm that has a flashlight attached to it. And this static mesh you can just ignore. This was something I was kind of working on, potentially having the item in hand in front of the camera, but I'm still just deciding if that's something I really want to do or not. But this spring arm, what it does essentially is it delays the flashlight just a little bit. So there's this camera rotation lag speed value. If I set this to something like 100, for example, let's go ahead and compile. And by the way, I have this set to save on compile always. So I don't have to do compile and then save. It just saves when I compile. So I set that to 100, the lag. So now if I turn on my flashlight and I move my camera, oh, is that reverse? Okay, that seems snappier now. Let's see. Let's change the lag speed. Yeah, it's the speed, so it's how fast it's going. Let's put it to 5. And now, if I go in the dark here so we can see what's going on. Yeah, so now as I look around, my flashlight really lags behind, right? So that's kind of too slow for me. That's why I had a value of 20. I just wanted to be subtle, really subtle. Let's compile, save, play, turn on my flashlight. There you go. So it just feels a little bit more organic, what I'm going for, but it's not lagging behind so much that it would be kind of annoying. So yeah, that's all that spring arm is in my character. Now let's go into the actual node graphs. So I have a few different graphs, the event graph. What this is doing is basically event begin play. It sets a bunch of parameters. These are parameters that I need to access in various areas. So for example, I'm getting a reference to self, and I'm passing that to an actor component, which is player interact trace. That's my logic for looking at something and identifying if there's an interactable object in front of me. So that takes place in an actor component. Now, an actor component, if you don't know, is just a blueprint type. You come here to blueprint. If I create a blueprint class, I can create an actor component. An actor component is a reusable component that can be added to any actor. So this is a way to kind of keep some functionality separate and a little bit more modular. So I have 2 actor components as part of my first person character. I have my inventory, which is obviously taking care of all my items and things that I pick up. And then I have my interact trace, which again is just sending a line trace, or a line is shooting out from my first person character, and it's seeing if I am looking at anything that's interactable, hence interact trace. So what I'm doing in the event begin play for my character for organization is I'm taking a reference to self. So I'm getting my first person character, a reference to this component, and I'm passing that on to my actor component interact trace. So my interact trace doesn't need to do like cast to first person character. I don't need to do any casting. I'm just passing this information on one time when the game starts playing. And I'm doing the same thing with my actor component inventory. I'm getting a reference to my first person character. I am getting a reference to my heads up display UI, just because I'll need to do a few things animation wise. Like when I look at something, I'm going to animate that cursor in the middle. And I am passing the heads up display, the HUD, to the interact trace actor component, so I can do the animation. I'm passing it on to my inventory, so I can change the heads up display blueprint. I can change that, what's it called? The widget. So for example, when I bring up my inventory, I have a reference to that heads up display in that inventory actor component. And the last thing I'm doing is, now that I have my heads up display, because I got that earlier, I am giving the heads up display a reference to myself. So all that's happening in my first person character event begin play for this event graph is I'm basically just getting references to all the places that they need to be. So this is all about communication. I want my blueprints to communicate with each other. And how do you know what's going to need a reference to what? Well, it's a good idea to sit down before you start building out your functionality in your node graphs, and to kind of make a little plan of what you plan to do, what kind of functionality you need. And from there, you can start to make decisions about what needs a reference to what, without getting into like casting every time you want to look at something. So that is everything here. Let's look at the movement graph. So if I double click on that, we'll open up that. Now, obviously, this is all my movement. Let's just get into this. This is more basic. I do want to touch on the crouch specifically, just because there was that cool functionality there. Yeah, so let's start with the set speed. So this is how I'm changing speed when I crouch or when I'm sprinting, for example. So this is on a tick. So on event tick, it's basically checking my character state A state is just, if you see here, I'm printing it on screen. So if you can see I'm walking. Just look at the top left of my screen. I'm idle, I'm walking, I'm crouching, I'm sprinting. Oh, let's see. Sprinting. Even if I talk to this character, it says I'm in dialogue. So a state is a really good way to keep organized and to identify what functionality can happen or can't happen when you're in a specific state. So for example, if I'm crouching, I don't want to be able to jump because that just wouldn't make sense for my particular game. If I'm in dialogue, I don't want to be able to do a bunch of stuff. So states is a good way to keep organized. And it's just a broad concept that you should get familiar with. So it's checking which state I'm in. And then basically what it's doing, all this is doing is, this is just printing on a string for which state I'm in. This is just for my development purposes. Like you saw on the top left, it was showing that. The cool thing about an enum, so my character state is what's called an enumeration, right? So you could right click, what's it under? Is it under its own thing? Yeah, so you could add an enumeration. That's all that this is. It's called character state, enumeration character state. If I were to click on this, this is kind of like a category system. So you can create all of the possible states for the characters. So we have idle, walking, sprinting, jumping, falling, crouching, inspecting, dialogue, and in menu. So these are all the states that my character can be in as of now. I could add more later. What constitutes a state? Well, it's kind of like when you're in a car and you go into drive or reverse or neutral. Basically, if you think about it like that, you can only be in one of those at a time. You're setting the state of your car. If I'm in reverse, I can't also be in drive because we can't go forward and backward at the same time. So that's a good way to think about states. If I am idle, I can't be doing any of these other things, right? I can't be walking, sprinting, jumping. Now, I could be standing still and in a menu, but as soon as I'm in a menu, I'm no longer idle, right? So that's the idea. If it's something that the character can only be doing one of at a time, and it's not getting its wires crossed, then that's considered a state, and I'm adding it to this list, basically. So we have that character state enumeration, and I can set that up as a variable. So create a new variable, set the variable type to character state. And now I have that, and I can set it, and I can get a reference to it, and I can do these cool things like select. So here's a good example of that happening. My character state, drag off of this, I could do a select, and that gives me every state. And depending on what this is plugged into, so if this was plugged into a branch node, for example, it's automatically going to give me whatever I'm plugged into. So I could set this branch depending on what state I'm in. So if I'm idle, it's on. If I'm jumping, it's on. Falling, I'm just coming up with some random ones, right? So the select node is really, really cool. I plugged this into my set max walk speed. So then it gave me a float, right? So now, as I'm setting my walk speed on my character on tick, I can actually set specific walk speeds according to the character state. So everything has a walk speed of 0, except for when I'm actually moving. Walking is 400, sprinting 600, crouching is 200. And that's just how I've decided to do this. Now, this actually isn't happening on every single tick. It's not setting and resetting. If I were to just to do a print string, for example. Let's do a print string, and let's say speed is set. And I'll make that a nice bright red. All right, so keep an eye on the top left of my screen. All right, let's go here. Top left of the screen, speed is set when I'm walking. Speed is set when I change to sprinting. Speed is set again when I'm crouching, all right, or when I stand up. This was on tick, so you would kind of expect that to be set every single tick or every single frame. So why isn't that happening? How am I doing it only when I make changes? Well, to do that, I have two variables. I have the character state, and I have the previous character state. So the previous character state, let's see if I can remember here. Yeah, so the previous character state is set after this branch node. What is this branch node? Well, it is checking if the previous state, first it's checking if these two are equal. So is the previous state equal to the character state? And then we're doing a not Boolean. So it's basically checking if these are not equal. If these are not equal, then just go ahead and continue on, right? But if these are equal, then do nothing. So if I did a print string here to show you what's going on, they were equal. All right, you're going to see this printed quite a few times because, all right, so now we're seeing that pretty much on every tick, okay? So it's doing that quick check just to keep things a little bit cleaner, a little bit more efficient. It's not going to go through all of this logic on every tick. It's only going to go through all of this logic if these are not equal. So that's a nice little trick there. I use it in a few places. I also use it in my interact trace when I'm looking at stuff in my scene. I don't want to check every single tick. I just want to check an object if it's a new object that I'm looking at kind of for the first time. So this is a really nice way to do that. And yeah, that's how I'm setting the speed of my character. So that we can move aside, set speed. Make sure this is up where it needs to be. Okay, camera input, nothing crazy here. This is just looking taking my mouse input or my right joystick input if I'm using a gamepad, and we're looking around. Similar with movement input, however, you'll notice I have some selects with my character state again in a few places. So this one, for example, it's checking, am I idle, walking, or jumping? Okay, then I can set to walking. This one, when I let go of my movement input, it's kind of checking what should I set the character state to now that we've let go. If I'm idle, then set it back to idle. If I was walking, set it to idle. If I was jumping, set it to idle. This would probably take you kind of looking at my setup and getting into a little bit more to know exactly why I chose these specific ones. But just know that I'm working with character states in a lot of different areas. So for example, sprint, all right? There's a branch to decide, can I sprint right now? I can only sprint if I was already walking or if I was already sprinting. I can't just start sprinting if I'm in the middle of crouching. I can't just start sprinting if I'm in the middle of being idle and I'm not walking already. And again, this is an example of how character state or states in general helps us keep organized and avoid a lot of bugs that would happen. So for example, I had this bug that if my character was crouched and I held down sprint while I was crouching, I would just automatically start sprinting. And that's not really functionality I want for a crouching character. I don't want to just be able to move really fast. So I can specify and say only sprint if you have these current states active, if you're in these current states. So that's movement input, that's camera, sprint, jump input, very similar logic. We are jumping, we're stopping our jumping. And when we jump, we're setting a character state. When we stop jumping, we're setting it to idle. We can only jump if we're idle, walking, sprinting, or jumping already. We can't jump when we're crouching or falling or inspecting or in dialogue or in menu. So just another look at character states. Okay, but now getting into the actual crouch, what I wanted to show you here is, let's see, I'm just setting the capsule half height when I crouch, basically. I'm just animating that capsule to be half the height that it was. So nothing crazy there. But when I let go of crouch, when this input action is completed, it's going to do a little branch. Okay, the first thing it's going to do is it's going to check and it's going to make sure, are you idle or are you walking or are you crouching already? Okay, and that's just managing my character states, as we've gotten into a few times now. But what's really important here is I have this stand clear function, is stand clear. So this is kind of like a question. It's asking, is it clear to stand up? And it's going to check that. If it is clear to stand up, then we're going to move forward with the logic and we're going to stand up. If it's not clear to stand up, we're going to check again. All right. We're going to do a retriggerable delay of 0.3 seconds, and then we're going to check it again. Is it clear to stand up? So if I were to, let's do a print string here, kind of to interrupt this, and we'll say not clear. All right. So this will show you every time it's checking if it's clear to stand up. So let's compile and save, go to play. If I crouch, as soon as I let go of my crouch, you're gonna start to see this. So I let go and it's checking, not clear, not clear, not clear, not clear. As soon as I move out from here, I stand up and we're good to go. It's now clear. It's given the blueprint the okay to go ahead and stand up. So let's get rid of that print string and let's look at this function. So you could double click to go into this function. Basically, what this is doing is it's getting my actor location with a reference to myself. So it's just looking at myself, my blueprint first person character, and I am adding a vector. So this is my location, right? Because I'm getting the location, and then I'm adding 110 units on the z-axis. So 110 centimeters, it's checking above my head, 110 centimeters. And what is it doing? Well, it's simply doing a quick line trace. It's checking if it hit anything above my head. And then it is setting something on this return value. So this is basically if it was hit or not, all right? And then it's setting that. So if I go back to movement, you could see out of is stand clear, that's basically just going straight into this branch. So if I did not hit something, right? Because this has a not Boolean. So if I did not hit something, then it's clear and we stand up. If I did hit something, then it's false. We re-trigger the delay and we check again. Is it safe to stand up? No, check again. Is it safe to stand up? No, check again. So it's not checking every single frame and it's not checking every 0.3 seconds for the entire game. It's only checking if I'm crouching under something and I try to stand up and there's something in the way. So I'm getting really, really specific. That's why I have these branch nodes and yeah, that's how I'm checking. So you could use that one in your own project. It's kind of useful once you understand the logic. And once you understand the logic of that, you can actually use similar principles, of course, in other projects and other use cases as well. All right, what else is really, really important for me to share? Let's just take a brief look at let's go to game, blueprints. I have my components, right? So I have my interact trace and I have my inventory. These two are both really big ones. So let's just start with the interact trace. You'll see some familiar things here. If I go to, let's see, circle trace, right? So this is an event that's happening. And there's some similar kind of familiar things here. We have, it's instead of a line trace, it's a sphere trace this time, right? But I have some similar logic going on. It's checking if I hit something. So similar to when I tried to stand up and I was checking if there's something above me. This is checking if I hit something, but more specifically, it's checking within a trace channel. So you can set objects to a certain trace channel. And it's checking if I hit an interactable object. So not everything in my scene is interactable. You can set that in the static mesh. If I go here and go to the static mesh and come down to collision, you could see that this is set to block on interact. If this was set to ignore, let me just set that book to ignore and we'll play the game. I look at my book and it doesn't pick up that this is an interactable object and I can't do anything, all right? But if I come back to the static mesh, we could set that back to block on the interact trace channel. And now, of course, when I look at my book, the cursor will animate and I can actually pick it up. Okay, so back to my actor component, interact trace. I'm checking if an object is an interact object. And basically to get that, I'm just doing a bit of vector math. So I'm getting my player camera manager and I'm getting my camera. Okay, and then I'm getting the forward vector. So I want to be able to tell which way my camera is facing. So I'm multiplying the forward vector, so that's just the direction I'm facing, by the trace distance. So the trace distance is a variable I have set up. Right now it's set to 200. So basically it'll look 200 units in the direction that the camera is facing. And I am adding, again, this is just vector math. So when I say a vector, it's a series of a few numbers. In this case, it's X, Y, Z. It's the location. So I'm adding that line that 200 unit line to my camera location. And again, it's multiplied in the forward direction of my camera. So that these four, I guess 6 nodes right here, 7 nodes. This is all just to get a line, a vector line that starts at my camera, is the direction my camera's facing, and is 200 units long. And then it is checking if that's an interact. So whatever it hit, it's going to check if it's an interact object. And all of this logic is basically just getting the information of whatever it hit. And I have some branch nodes, again, similar to what we had earlier with I'm setting the last hit object in addition to the currently hit object, okay? And that's just to make sure that I'm not firing off this logic every single time or every single frame, but it's only firing off when I look at a new object. And then very simply, this is just playing an animation. So when I look at something, it's playing an animation from our heads-up display, and it's animating the cursor. When I look away, it's animating the cursor again so that it doesn't have that interact indicator. So that's all that's happening here. But very importantly, it's also setting some variables. So it's setting what actor is being hit. It's setting whatever actor was the last actor I looked at. This is all important information to have, and it's being set up within this function. So this is happening on event tick, but again, I have some conditions in there. So really it's only happening when I look at something new or when I look away from something I was previously looking at. And then the rest of this logic is taking place when I actually press the input action interact. So when I press my interact button, in this case I have it mapped to E, it's going to check some things. It's for one, right off the bat, it's going to make sure that I don't have anything equipped in my hands, because there's 2 paths of logic, right? If I do have something equipped, then it's going to go through this path, which currently isn't set up. All it's doing right now, it's printing a string and it's saying, hey, this is equipped, set up this interact trace, all right? But if I don't have something in my hands, it's going to check to make sure my character is idle, and it is going to fire off interact. This is a blueprint interface. I'm not going to get into that right now, but once I interact with something, it's going to fire off interact. Where is it going to interact? Well, it's going to get the hit actor. Again, that's important that we set that up. So whatever I'm looking at, it's going to try to interact with that. It's going to send a little message, all right? And it's going to get a reference to the character that's interacting with it as well. So good example of that. Just select my book here, hit Control E to open up the graph. This has that same blueprint interface, and it is doing some logic. In this case, it's adding it to the inventory. So when I look at something and I press the input action interact button, it is going to send a message and say, hey, object, can you work with this blueprint interface interact? Do you have this added to it? Do you speak this language? And if it does, then it's going to go through this logic, add to inventory. If it doesn't, there's no foul, right? It's not going to shoot out an error. It's fine. It's just not going to add it to the inventory if it doesn't speak whatever interact language this is. The reason I'm using a blueprint interface for this is because I'm going to have a lot of different interact types. I'm going to have pickup objects. Classic example is like a container you want to open, or maybe a door you want to open. These don't have the same functionality. Like when I use a door, I'm not going to add the door to my inventory. So it needs to implement a different functionality. And that's where blueprint interfaces come in really handy, because you can set up kind of the communication, but you can leave the implementation or the functionality to the specific object. So in this case, it's the pickup object, and I have the functionality that I added to my inventory, which is a whole separate thing that I do here, where I communicate with my inventory actor component. We add something to the inventory. We shoot out a notification in my heads-up display that I picked up something. We set the inventory count, the overall items in my inventory, so we can tell if I'm out of inventory space, and we destroy the actor so that it's no longer in the world after I pick it up. And in this case, we play a sound. So if you listen real closely, when I pick up this book, you'll hear a little sound. So there you go. That's just an overall look at my character and a few components. So the interact trace and the inventory actor component. Again, the way that I'm communicating between all of these is in the main event graph. Oh, let's go back to my character. In the main event graph, I'm setting up references to everything and kind of passing those references everywhere. And this was a breakthrough when I understood this, because previously I was casting to everything, which in my little game honestly isn't a huge deal. Like, if the only way you know how to do it is with casting, then don't let me stand in your way. You can do that. However, understanding how to pass references from one blueprint to another blueprint, personally for me, that was a big revelation, big breakthrough, and made this whole setup just a lot cleaner, and I wasn't casting all over the place. So yeah, let's close out of all of this and take a look at what else you might want to see. I definitely want to show you the user interface widget, just because that's a real big one. But let's just look through here. Pickups. The way I'm managing my pickup items is I have a data asset, which is this data asset item blueprint. These are all the variables that need to be determined with a particular pickup object. So the name, the description, the thumbnail, the pickup sound, the static mesh, so what's the actual model for this object, and the distance from cam. Again, this was kind of in progress. This is me determining how far away the objects should be from the camera if I'm gonna kind of have my player hold the object in front of them. Obviously, bigger objects would be held further away from my character, and closer objects or smaller objects would be held closer, so it would have a smaller value here. But that's the data asset item blueprint class. And then we have the actual data asset sub items, which are where all of this is defined. So if I go to my book, for example, book, just a random description right now, it's not actually a green book. My icon, my pickup sound, the static mesh, which in this case is just a cube for now, or a rectangle. And then the distance from camera, I have that set as well. So all of those will obviously be different for something like the key card. Now, the reason I did it this way is I want to use this same exact blueprint for all of my items in this BP pickup parent, okay? I want to use the same one, and then on the specific item, I could just go over here and say, all right, this is a key card, or this is a book. And that way, I don't have to have, if I had 100 different items, I don't have to have 100 children of some pickup object. I could just have one blueprint that has is defined by the various data assets. So yeah, just for fun, I'll pick all those up, and now I have 2 books and 2 key cards. All right. So that's my pickup parent. It's very simple. It's going through this add to inventory that I kind of looked at briefly before. Yeah, there you go. Okay. Let's look at the interface. Sorry, not the interface. That's my blueprint interface. Let's go back a step and look at the UI. So in my user interface, I have my heads-up display. This is the big one. This is the one worth looking at probably for now. And the way I've decided to do it, instead of having kind of a dynamic heads-up display where menus overlap other menus, I've decided to keep things as simple as possible, and everything has a specific place. So notifications will always happen up here, and nothing is going to overlap that. When I open my inventory, that will happen here, and nothing will ever overlap that. The only exception is when I create my main menu, I want that to be center of screen, or I want that to take up the whole screen. And in that case, I'm going to dynamically create and destroy that in a way that can go over the top of everything, because that's kind of a big one. And then I have my cursor and work in progress. Oops, just moved something. I'm not sure this is how I'll do things in the end, but for now, when I equipped an object, obviously it was telling me what was equipped and it had the little icon here. So the way I'm animating the cursor is, if you go to animations down here, I have 2 animations. I have notification and cursor animation. Cursor animation, if I play through that or scrub through it, you can see it's just opening up and making those other elements appear and kind of animate outwards. And then the inverse animation would be kind of stowing those back away. If we look at our notification animation, if I scrub through this one's a little longer. It kind of blinks on and off to show, to notify the character that this is there. And then after, let's see, after 4 seconds, it fades away. So because I have these as animations within this widget blueprint, I can call on that within other areas of my game. So as long as I have a reference to this heads-up display, which I do. So if I go to, for example, let's go back to components, and let's go to the interact trace. You can see if I go back to the circle trace, which is happening on tick, it has a reference to the heads-up display, and it's simply playing that animation when I look at something. And when I look away, it's playing that same animation, but it's playing it in reverse. So yeah, when I look at something, these animate outwards. When I look away, they animate inwards. And it's the same concept for this notification, or even for opening or making this visible, my inventory. It's simply just getting a reference to my heads-up display widget blueprint, and it's calling on that functionality wherever it is. So let's look at the notification one. For example, where's a good place? Notification volumes. All right, so I have this notification volume blueprint, which is basically just a box collision. And if I come into contact, if I collide with that box collision, it's going to go through this logic, which has this create a notification logic, which is happening within the widget blueprint heads-up display. Let me say that again, because that was a lot. In my heads-up display, if I go to my graph, so this is set to a variable, this notification border. If I go to my graph, I have this create notification function that's happening. It's a function. When this is called, this function has an input called text. So it's setting the text of the notification text, and then it's playing this animation, which is just that animation that I showed you earlier. It's playing this notification animation. And then it is playing a sound, which is another variable. Okay, so if it's set to play a sound, I'll show you that in a second, then it'll play a sound. And it's also checking, is the sound supposed to be an error sound? So sometimes I want to notify my character when there's an error. So for example, when I pick up too many objects and I can't carry anything else, it's a notification that says your inventory is full, and it'll play a different sound for my error sound. So all of this logic is a function within my heads-up display widget blueprint. In other areas, in other blueprints, I can call on that functionality. The only thing I need to do to call on that functionality is I need to have a reference to that heads-up display, which again, I'm getting that reference and passing it around to everywhere that it's needed, which is really useful. In this case, I am setting, so this is a notification volume. This one just happens to be right here. So I could, let's make another notification volume. I'll just copy this, and let's have it if I get close enough to this character. All right, so this one is right here. And let's actually add some fun new functionality here. Let's add the actual notification text, okay? And this is going to be set to text as a variable. I didn't have this set up already because I didn't have more than one notification volume, so I didn't need it. Let's get this text and let's use this text as the text when it calls the create notification function, which is again over here. When it creates the notification, it does everything. So let me copy this so I have it for later. L to toggle flashlight. Notification text by default will just be this is text, or this is a notification. So if we haven't set it up, it'll just say something. And let's set this to public, so it's editable in each instance. All right, and let's plug this into there. So now, let me go back to my original one just to set the proper text. In this notification volume, the notification text will be L to toggle flashlight. All right. This notification volume will be something different. This will be press E to talk. So now, when I move close enough to this character, it says press E to talk. If I were to go in here, it says L to toggle flashlight. So that is how we're calling the notification function within the heads-up display. All we need to do is we need to have a reference to this heads-up display wherever we're trying to call that functionality. Another example of where we call that is when we pick up an item. You can see it says book added to inventory. So that functionality is happening within this pickup item. If I open that pickup parent, the add to inventory, it is calling that notification, right? Which is the function within the heads-up display. And it's setting the text. So in this case, it's formatting that text. It's getting the name of the target item, whatever we just picked up. It's saying item added to inventory. So that item changes to whatever it is. So when I picked up the book, it didn't say item added to inventory. It said book added to inventory or key card added to inventory, right? So yeah, that's getting into the weeds. That's a lot of the general functionality that I have built out, some of the logic behind what I'm doing. The last one I wanted to talk about is maybe my favorite that I have so far, which is the actual dialog. So of course we have our conditional dialog where we can take different paths and even call on different functions within the dialog. So for example, if I talk to a character or an NPC and we just completed a quest, then the NPC can call on an event to add an item to our inventory. So we complete a quest, we talk to them, they give us the reward. That's just one example of what I have set up that I can do in this dialog system. Now, the dialog system that I have is using probably one of my most favorite plugins that I've come across for Unreal Engine so far, and it's called QuillScript. Now you can pick this up on the Fab Marketplace. This is, in my opinion, one of the most organized and well thought out add-ons I've come across. Very, very highly reviewed. And I can also say that as I've run into issues with this, not issues, but as I've needed to ask specific questions about how things work, I've been able to go into their Discord and the developer has been very responsive to me. So I definitely recommend this. This has a lot of the functionality just built into it. Now, the overall kind of approach to this is you can script out your dialogue almost as if you were writing a screenplay. So you can write out all the options in a very approachable format. In this case, it could be a text document. So I have my text document here for my conversation with this desk agent. And you have to get into like the formatting. So you would just basically read up here and see they have examples on how to format things. It's all very, very easy to follow. But let me just walk you through the logic. Basically, when I launch this particular script, when I talk to this character, it shows their name, and it's also identifying an audio cue that should play when I talk. In this case, I have a sound cue. I'm just pasting the path here in my game, which is this sound file. So when I talk to my character, you heard like that gibberish. That is being identified or called right here. And again, how did I know to type in this specific format? You basically just have to go through their documentation and you can learn some things on how to do that. And then they say, can I help you? Then we have some options. Where is everyone? I'm here for my flight. I don't know. Can you? And depending on which option I choose, again, this is just a little formatting quirk that you'll learn. It'll send you to a different section in this dialog. So where is everyone? That sends me to where everyone, which is identified right here with this @ sign, where everyone. So if I say, where is everyone? Then the desk agent says in this voice, it's quiet tonight, not many flights at this hour. And then it goes to the next section, which is help find. Desk agent says, can I help you find where you're going? So when you first look at this, this might be a little bit confusing. The formatting is tricky when you first figure it out. But after you understand and you've practiced for a little bit, you could just quickly write out this logic. It's really, really easy. And then to save this, you just save it as, you just save it as a .qsc file. And that's just a plain text file. So I could come here and I could save it as dialog.qsc, quell script. All right, I'm not going to save it. And then you get a reference to this in your actual game. So if I open up my project, let's go to my NPC here. This is actually playing the script, and you can identify which script. So in my blueprints, if I go to, actually I think it's game dialog scripts, I have different chapters and stuff, different characters. These are the 2 scripts that can play. So I just uploaded those plain text files, the quill script files, and now I can reference those. So the first time I talk to it, it plays script number 1, and it sets a variable that I have already talked. So has talked gets set. And of course, the next time I talk to it, it's going to play a different script. So now it's playing gate agent number 2, which is just a text file that I uploaded. So this add-on, quill script, really simplified the whole process for me. I'm not going to get into like customizing the user interface on this particular one, but I mean, briefly, I'll just show you in my dialog folder structure here, I have defaults, and you can set the styling of these different widgets. So for example, custom dialog box, I could change the text and all of that good stuff that's happening here. Let's just talk to my character again. I'm not going to get into that because I don't want this to be a 2-hour video. We're coming up on an hour. But yeah, that's kind of the progress, the game dev update of my project so far. I guess one other bit of functionality worth mentioning is when I talk to my character, I'm launching Dialog, which is a little custom function that I have, which I'm actually setting my view target to the camera, my dialog camera. And when I stop the dialog, I'm setting back to my first person camera. So as you can see, if I talk to him at this angle, it's going to go to this predetermined angle. And when I'm done talking, let me just go through all this. It goes back to my first person character. So that's the only other logic that I have set up with my dialog system. But yeah, this is very simple. Now that I have this set up, I have inventory, I have items, I have dialog. This isn't all the functionality my game needs. I still have some other like puzzle logic, for example, that I want to do, but this gets me a long ways there. And I'm very happy with how clean this is. I've been able to do this in a way that I'm proud of. Of course, there are always more optimizations that I can do. I'm sure some of you watching this might think, well, you should be doing things this way. This one thing could be better, and that's fine. One thing that I've happily learned is efficiency is kind of twofold. One, it's how fast your game runs, right? Obviously, efficiency is all about better performance. But 2, efficiency is also about how fast you can develop, how easy it is for you to understand the logic that you're laying out. And that's where I feel really good. I understand everything that I've done so far in a way that I can take a few days off and I can come back to it and I won't be totally lost at what I was doing. My references are a lot cleaner than they've been previously. I'm not casting everywhere. So yeah, feeling good about this project so far. Very excited to keep going. And that's kind of all I have for you on this one. Thanks for supporting patreon.com/RileyB3D. I appreciate all the support, and I'll see you in the next update.